In our first lecture, we developed the basic concept of crime. In the second lecture, we understood criminology through concepts such as deviance, social norms, values and security. आज हम एक और important step लेंगे. Today our topic is crime and criminals. अब हम सिर्फ ये नहीं देखेंगे कि crime क्या है, बल्कि ये समझने की कोशिश करेंगे who commits crime, what types of criminals can be identified, how do occasional, habitual and professional criminals differ, what is white collar crime, what is organized crime, and how are corporate, financial and violent crimes connected with modern criminology. सबसे पहले, who is a criminal? Broadly speaking, a criminal is a person who commits an act that is prohibited by criminal law and is held legally responsible for that offense. लेकिन क्रिमिनोलॉजी में क्रिमिनल को सिर्फ एक लेबल के तौर पर देखना सफिशेंट नहीं होता. अ क्रिमिनोलॉजिस्ट आस्क, इस पर्सन ने क्राइम क्यों किया? क्या क्राइम आइसोलेटेड इंसिडेंट था? क्या ये पर्सन रिपीटेडली ऑफेंड करता है? क्या क्राइम प्लान था? क्या क्राइम लाइवलीहुड का सोर्स बन गया? क्या सोशल सर्कमस्टांसेस ने बिहेवियर को इन्फ्लुएंस किया? यानी क्रिमिनोलॉजी ऑफेंस के साथ ऑफेंडर को भी स्टडी करती है. टाइप्स ऑफ क्रिमिनल्स: ओकेजनल क्रिमिनल, हैबिचुअल क्रिमिनल एंड प्रोफेशनल क्रिमिनल. इन तीनों का बेसिक डिफरेंस फ्रीक्वेंसी, पैटर्न, मोटिवेशन और रिलेशनशिप विद क्रिमिनल एक्टिविटी में है. लेट्स अंडरस्टैंड दैम वन बाय वन. ओकेजनल क्रिमिनल. Who is an occasional criminal? An occasional criminal is a person who commits an offense occasionally or under particular circumstances rather than making criminal activity a regular pattern of life. यानी क्राइम उसकी नॉर्मल लाइफस्टाइल नहीं होता. सपोज एक अदरवाइज लॉ अबाइडिंग पर्सन किसी अनयूजुअल सिचुएशन, इंटेंस प्रेशर, अपॉर्चुनिटी या एक्सेप्शनल सर्कमस्टांसेस में ऑफेंस कमिट कर देता है. द की आइडिया इज क्राइम इज सिचुएशनल रादर देन अ सेटल्ड वे ऑफ लाइफ. इस कैटेगरी को हिस्टोरिकली फर्दर सब टाइप्स में डिस्कस किया गया है. सूडो क्रिमिनल. सूडो का मतलब होता है अपेरेंट और सीमिंग, यानी समथिंग दैट अपेयर्स टू बी वन थिंग बट इज़ नॉट एग्जैक्टली द सेम इन द मॉरल और क्रिमिनोलॉजिकल सेंस. क्लासिकल क्रिमिनोलॉजिकल लिटरेचर में सूडो क्रिमिनल उन केसेस को रेफ़र करता है जहां एन एक्ट टेक्निकली लॉ वायलेट करता है लेकिन सर्कमस्टांसेस एक्स्ट्रा ऑर्डिनरी हों या एक्ट में ऑर्डिनरी मॉरल क्रिमिनलिटी का एलिमेंट वीक हो. फॉर एग्जांपल, हिस्टोरिकली सेल्फ डिफेंस सिचुएशंस को सूडो क्रिमिनल कैटेगरी के डिस्कशन में प्लेस किया गया. की आइडिया क्या है? लीगल वायलेशन is not necessarily same level of moral blameworthiness. ये डिस्टिंक्शन इम्पॉर्टेंट है बिकॉज क्रिमिनोलॉजी और क्रिमिनल जस्टिस में सर्कमस्टांसेस एंड कॉन्टेक्स्ट मैटर करते हैं. क्रिमिनलॉइड. क्रिमिनलॉइड को हिस्टोरिकल लिटरेचर में ट्रांजिशनल और सिचुएशनल टाइप के तौर पर डिस्क्राइब किया गया है. ये पर्सन नेसेसरीली कॉन्टिन्यूसली क्रिमिनल नहीं होता, लेकिन टेम्पटेशन, अपॉर्चुनिटी, सर्कमस्टांसेस और सोशल एनवायरनमेंट जैसे फैक्टर्स उसे क्राइम की तरफ पुश कर सकते हैं. इन अदर वर्ड्स, द अपॉर्चुनिटी मे एक्टिवेट अ टेंडेंसी दैट अदरवाइज रिमेन्स कंट्रोल्ड. हिस्टोरिकल क्लासिफिकेशंस में क्रिमिनलॉइड को बॉर्न क्रिमिनल और ओकेजनल क्रिमिनल के बीच एक ट्रांजिशनल कैटेगरी के तौर पर एक्सप्लेन किया गया है. हैबिचुअल क्रिमिनल. हैबिचुअल का मतलब है रिपीटेड और एस्टेब्लिश्ड पैटर्न. A habitual criminal is an offender whose criminal behavior has become recurrent or persistent. यहाँ डिफरेंस समझें. Occasional criminal crime is an exception और habitual criminal crime becomes a repeated pattern. This distinction is extremely important. Habitual offender. Habitual offending का basic concept repeated offending से closely related है. A person who repeatedly commits offenses may be treated differently by the criminal justice system from someone who commits a single isolated offense. इसी context में different jurisdictions have historically developed habitual offender or habitual criminal statutes. Habitual offender statute. What is a habitual offender statute? Generally, an habitual offender statute is a legal mechanism through which repeated offending or prior convictions may result in enhanced legal consequences subject to the law of the relevant jurisdiction. Simple example, suppose a person repeatedly commits serious offenses and is repeatedly convicted. A legal system may consider that criminal history when determining the appropriate sentence. The underlying rationale is deterrence, public protection, recognition of repeated offending, and sometimes incapacitation or rehabilitation. लेकिन यहाँ एक important principle, habitual offender laws must operate through due process and lawful proof of prior offences. They are not simply a license to punish someone merely because society considers them dangerous. Consequences of habitual offending. Repeated offending can have consequences at several levels. Legal consequences. Repeated convictions may result in enhanced sentencing, stricter supervision, restrictions associated with repeat offender laws. Number 2. Individual consequences. Repeated criminal involvement can make reintegration into lawful social life more difficult. Social consequences. Habitual offending can affect families, communities, victims, public confidence, and social order. Criminological consequence. Repeated offending raises a crucial criminological question: why does an offender continue offending despite previous punishment? And this question eventually takes us toward theories of learning, social environment, strain, control, opportunity, and recidivism. Professional criminal. Now the third major category, professional criminal. A professional criminal is an offender for whom criminal activity functions as a regular, organized, and often specialized way of life of livelihood. Yani, occasional criminal, crime happens sometimes. Habitual criminal, crime becomes repeated. And professional criminal, crime becomes a specialized activity. Characteristics of professional criminals. Professional criminals are generally characterized by skill. They may develop specialized techniques, experience. Repeated involvement can produce knowledge of criminal opportunities and methods. Planning. Professional criminal activity may involve considerable planning. Specialization. Some offenders may specialize in particular types of offenses. Criminal networks. Professional offenders may operate through contacts and associations. Crime as a source of livelihood. Criminal activity may become an important means of obtaining income. Adaptability. Professional offenders may adapt their methods when law enforcement techniques or technology change. And this brings us to one of the most important modern categories, white collar crime. The term white collar crime is associated particularly with the sociologist Edwin H. Sutherland. The basic idea is that crime is not confined to street offenders or people from disadvantaged backgrounds. Crime can also occur in businesses, professions, corporations, financial institutions, government-related settings, and other legitimate occupational environments. So, white-collar crime challenges the stereotype that a criminal is always a street offender. Not at all. A person wearing a suit, occupying a respectable position, or working in a legitimate organization can also commit crime. That is one of the major insights of white-collar criminology. Types of white-collar crime. Bank fraud, blackmail, bribery, cellular phone fraud, computer fraud, counterfeiting, credit card fraud, currency schemes, embezzlement, environmental schemes, extortion, forgery, healthcare fraud, insider trading, insurance fraud, investment schemes, kickback, larceny, money laundering, securities fraud, tax evasion, telemarketing fraud, welfare fraud, weights and measures. Organized crime. Now we move from individual offenders to criminal organizations and networks. What is organized crime? Organized crime refers broadly to systematic criminal activity carried out by structured groups or networks, often for continuing financial or other benefits. The key words are organization, continuity, coordination, profit or power. Organized crime is therefore different from a spontaneous individual offense. It can involve planning, division of roles, secrecy, networks, corruption, violence, and financial operations. Typical activities of organized crime. Historically and in contemporary criminology, organized criminal groups may be involved in activities such as illegal markets, extortion, financial crime, trafficking related offenses, counterfeiting, cyber enabled crime, corruption, and money laundering. The exact activities vary across groups and societies. The important point is organized crime is characterized not merely by the seriousness of one offense but by the organized and continuing nature of criminal activity. Violence. Now we come to violent crime. Violence involves the use or threat of physical force against persons. Violent crimes can threaten life, bodily integrity, liberty, and personal security. Assault, murder, and terrorism are violent crimes. Let's distinguish them. Assault. Assault broadly involves unlawful conduct that threatens or attempts to cause physical harm, though the precise legal definition varies by jurisdiction. Criminologically, assault is important because it directly threatens physical security. It can occur in interpersonal conflicts, domestic settings, public places, and criminal confrontations. Murder. Murder is among the most serious forms of violent crime. At its core, it involves the unlawful killing of another person with the mental element required by the applicable criminal law. For CSS, don't reduce murder simply to killing. The legal concept involves questions of unlawfulness, intention, mental state, circumstances, and applicable legal definitions. Criminology, however, goes one step further. Why does homicide occur? That brings us back to the criminological analysis. Terrorism. Terrorism involves serious violence or threats of violence used to create fear and pursue broader political, ideological, or other objectives, with definitions varying across legal systems and scholarly frameworks. Its distinguishing feature is that violence is not necessarily directed only at the immediate victim. The broader objective can be creating fear and influencing a wider audience or political or social environment. Thus, terrorism has both criminal dimension and political and social dimension. Financial crime. Financial crime involves unlawful conduct aimed at obtaining, transferring, concealing, or manipulating money or financial assets. Examples can include fraud, money laundering, securities related offenses, financial deception, certain forms of cyber enabled financial crime. Financial crime is particularly important in modern criminology because financial systems are increasingly digital, interconnected, and international. Remittance services. Remittance services are legitimate financial services used to transfer money from one place to another. However, like other financial channels, they can potentially be misused or unlawful financial activity. From a criminological perspective, the important question is how can legitimate financial infrastructure be exploited by criminal actors? This connects financial crime with organized crime, fraud, money laundering, and cyber crime. Corporate crime. Corporate crime refers to illegal or harmful conduct associated with corporations or organizational activity, often carried out to benefit the organization it manages or other insiders. The important point is the organization itself can become a setting through which criminal conduct occurs. Corporate crime may produce financial losses, consumer harm, environmental damage, worker harm, and market distortion. And because corporations operate on a large scale, the consequences can also be large scale. अगर एग्जामिनर पूछता है डिस्कस डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ क्रिमिनल्स एंड मेजर फॉर्म्स ऑफ कंटेम्प्रेरी क्राइम, तो आंसर को सिर्फ डेफिनेशंस की लिस्ट ना बनाएं, आप एक एनालिटिकल फ्लो बना सकते हैं. क्रिमिनल क्लासिफिकेशन हेल्प्स क्रिमिनोलॉजिस्ट्स distinguish between occasional, habitual, and professional patterns of offending. Contemporary crime, however, extends beyond conventional street crime to include white-collar organized, financial, cyber, and corporate crime. These categories frequently